this video, I'm going to be speaking a little bit more about the 9 tenets of the God life. And for me, like I said in the previous video, if you haven't already watched that, I recommend watching that video on what is the God life, where I spoke about what is not only my God life, but the God life is in your interpretation of this as well, because it's unique for everybody. But here's a little bit of a framework that I designed for myself in checking in to see how I can assess how well I'm doing within my life in terms of the quality of the God life that I'm currently living. So there are 9 different tenets that I came up with, and each different tenet has 4 levels to it. So it's very easy for you to take a look at where it is that you're at within every single one of these unique tenets. So for example, what you could be doing is you assess in one of these tenets where you're at between levels 1 to 4, and then pick that as a number. Maybe it's 1 or 2. So if you had 2, for example, then you get the next one and see that, okay, maybe that's a 3. And then you can add up all these numbers to create one big number to then compare yourself like every quarter or every month if you wanted to do that. So month 1 could be that you're on 20. Month 2, you could be on 18. Hopefully you don't regress, but you get what I'm saying is that you can continue to track this and see where it is that needs the most attention. So I want to go into sharing a little bit about each one of these different tenets, starting off with the first one, which is the most important, and that is the tenet of happiness. So there's 4 levels to happiness, in where most people, they start at the lowest level and they stay there, or the lowest 2 levels, in that their happiness is from everything that is selfish. Now there are some people on the scale as well who naturally get to experience higher levels of happiness because intuitively they just feel a sense of being selfless. But we are so programmed and conditioned to stay at the lowest levels within all of these tenets, from the television, from media, from schools, education systems. It keeps us at the lowest levels for the majority of these. So the thing about the levels of happiness is if we start out at a point where we're very selfish, and the first level of selfishness is what we call immediate gratification. So with immediate gratification, what's happening here is that you're looking to fill a void of unhappiness through it's through solving a problem, which is a long-term problem, but you're doing so with a short-term solution. And the thing about that short-term solution as well is that it's only for you in that moment. So what happens is you feel down, you feel like you feel the need to feel better. So you go for something like a drink, like an alcoholic drink or an alcoholic beverage, or you go for something like a cigarette, you go for something like a drug. And I've been there before, when I wasn't aware and conscious of how I was trying to nurture myself and take care of myself in trying to fill this void of unhappiness. I was also looking for immediate gratification. And in this world that we live in right now with social media, this is something that's really damaging to our kids, right? It's damaging to the younger generation, because as soon as they get given this phone, it gives them more dopamine hits in a short space of time than we could ever have imagined when we were younger, right? So this is something that is becoming more and more of an issue, is people being programmed and conditioned to seek pleasure and happiness at the lowest level, right? So immediate gratification is immediate and it's only for you, it's selfish. Then we have the next level of selfish happiness, which is what we call delayed gratification. And delayed gratification is where you are now not necessarily feeling the pleasure in the moment, but you're starting to make certain sacrifices because you view there to be a future which is more important than the one that you're currently in. So you start to work a little bit more. You start to put off the things to the side that give you the pleasure in the moment, and it's really that short-term pain for long-term gain, that type of mindset, which is a good place to be in. So now you're building that discipline. You're at a level where you are delaying gratification, and you get to feel better over a bit of a longer period of time. But that feeling, that moment, because I've spoken to so many successful people, I never really understood it until I experienced it. But that feeling that you get as soon as you've hit that certain level of achievement, it's only there temporarily. It's there for a moment, and then it's gone. So this is a place which is better than immediate gratification, but it is not the pinnacle. Where you really want to be is at the selfless levels of happiness. So the third level of happiness is what we call the level of contribution. And this is where, again, it's a temporary thing. It's a little bit more long term, but now because it's selfless, you are able to experience a different level of happiness where you are contributing to other people's lives. And with there being more people, that's more happiness that you can experience, because it's not just you. You can experience happiness with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in comparison to one. This is the biggest difference, is now it's like spreading and it's becoming bigger than just one person, bigger than you. And you get to experience that happiness with every single one of those people. But the only problem is that it's temporary for each of them. Because even if you give, for example, somebody a lottery ticket and they win, chances are they're gonna lose that money quicker rather than later. Because it's like the saying says, you can either teach a man to fish, or you can either give a man a fish and you'll feed him for a day, or you can teach a man to fish and you feed him for a lifetime. So that's the thing about the third level. The fourth level of happiness is where that's the level of ultimate selflessness, where you are now not only contributing, but you're working. So it's like delaying gratification towards the ultimate good, towards something that you view as being a cause in the world that needs to happen. And when you're working towards the ultimate good, that's when God's on your side, and you are experiencing not only the happiness that comes from contribution, immediate gratification, delayed gratification, but also you're experiencing this new level of selfless happiness, because you're also working towards helping the majority of people delay gratification. That's what you're doing. So that's the first tenet. And if you want, I would highly recommend writing down the levels with each of these. And if you have any questions as well throughout the video, then write them down and then reach out to us and we can help you out with that. But the second tenet of the God life is what we call the tenet of love. So there's 4 levels of love. First level of love is level which we call it's baby love. It's baby love where you're in a very demanding place. You kind of need the love, and you will cry for help to get it, just like a baby will. And again, like the levels with this is, it starts out at being very selfish to then becoming selfless. So you have the baby love, then you have what's called conditional love, where you love another person simply because it's reciprocal. So you love me and then I'll love you back. You won't love a person unless. So this is conditional love as well, where you get to experience it only if somebody else gives it to you first, or if they're willing to give it to you in exchange. Then there is the third type of love, which is where you love simply because it's who you are, right? You love because you realize that fundamentally I am this highly energetic being who is able to pour from an abundance of love because it's simply who I am. So that's the third level, which is a higher level than the previous two. And then the fourth level is the level which is totally unconditional. And that's like where it's this magnanimous love. It's where there's this love where you love even if it hurts. You love even if it hurts. And that's the type of love that we've seen like leaders like Nelson Mandela, we've seen leaders like Mother Teresa love at that type of level. Now, what I want to have as a disclaimer here is that you don't necessarily have to have an ambition to be at the highest levels for each of these. I'm just giving you the levels so that you can make a decision as to where you want to be with each. But yeah, the next one is what we call the tenet of truth. So there's 4 levels of truth. The lowest level of truth is where you have the absence of truth. And that's actually a level that most people don't even get to because they're so arrogant. So where you want to be is not a place of arrogance, but you want to be at a place of ignorance. Because if you're in a place of arrogance, then you become unteachable and you can't learn anything. So it's absolutely horrible being there, because that's where you stay stuck. That's where all your problems are gonna not only be fertilized, but they're gonna continue to grow, become bigger and bigger. So you gotta let go of the arrogance and become ignorant. That's the next step. And ignorance is the absence of truth. It's the awareness that truth is absent. And from there, you can start to learn a lot more. The next level above this is where you start to accumulate truth. So we call this knowledge. A lot of people have the false belief, just like I did many years ago, that knowledge is power. That's bullshit. Knowledge is not power. Knowledge is only power when applied. And applied knowledge is actually the fourth level. That's the application of truth. But there's a level in between this. Because one of the things that I really struggle with is actually applying the things which were being taught to me. But I realized that the reason why is because there's a third level in between knowledge and between the pinnacle of application of truth, which is wisdom. There is a third level, which is a prerequisite to wisdom. And that third level is understanding. Meaning in this video right now, if you're watching this and you're taking notes and you're starting to get to grips with what it is, you're accumulating the truth. It will only really get to understanding when you can sit down like I am right now with another person, another individual, and you can break it down for them and simplify it so that they understand. And if you have that from another person, that confirmation, that feedback, that they understand and get the message that you're sharing with them, then you know that this was you operating from a level of understanding. And then that understanding, because it's so simple and you have so much certainty about what you're doing, then you can take action, then you can move. And the best way I can describe it is that, like, if you think about some of the things that you do every single day without fail, you take action on every single day without fail. For example, going into your job 9 to 5, doing it every single day without fail. The reason that you can do it is because somebody else made it simple for you so that you understand it and then you can take action on it. So that's where you want to get to. The highest level of wisdom, because with wisdom comes all of the fruits of abundance and the best place of the highest level of truth. You are most aligned with truth. And again, truth is another thing that we describe as being godly. So yeah, that's the third tenet. The next one is the tenet of value. So there's 4 levels of value. Lowest level of value is where you're giving the least amount of value, or you're getting the least amount of value. And this is the level we call the level of implementation. So every one of these levels is a different resource that you can use in order to have a value exchange. And so the lowest level, these resources are limited, and it usually tends to be because they're operating within a physical dimension. So where you want to be is you want to be operating at the highest levels where it's operating in a non-physical dimension. So the level of implementation is where you're using your muscles to make money. And your muscles are, of course, a physical resource, which they get tired, and you can't do it for as long as possible. So implementation is the lowest level where you're going to earn a limited amount of money between, minimum wage to just a little bit above minimum wage, 20, 30,000 maximum. After that, it goes to the second level of value, which is where you're not just using your muscles to make money, but you're now using your management skills to make money. Because this is where you're at a point of what we call unification. So unification is when you're bringing people together. That's when you become good as somebody who's either a leader, right? The lowest level of this is where you're going to be a manager, but the highest level is where you're a great leader. So unification, people who are being paid for their management skills, they're always going to earn more than people who are only being paid as the implementers, because these are the people directing the implementers. Then you have the third level of value, which is where you are now being paid in some of the non-physical ways through your heart, because you are being paid for your ability to speak, right? Or not just speak, but to communicate. So this is a level we call communication, where through what you're able to give to another person as a message, right? This is where you have a higher amount of value. And I want you to think about who are the best communicators of the world. It's people who are actors, people who are musicians, and you just look at how much these guys are getting paid. It's because they're able to share a message from not just their head to another person's head, but from their heart to another person's heart. For example, right now, what I'm doing is I'm not sharing it from my head to your head because I've memorized everything that I'm saying. This whole video has just been me speaking from my heart in terms of everything that I've accumulated and learned from my experience as an entrepreneur and on this journey of creating my own God life. So the fourth level that you want to get to as well is where you get to a point of using not just one resource, but this is a level where you can actually use 2 resources. One of them is your money, and another one is your mind. It's your money and your mind. So this is what we call the level of imagination, where when you combine these two together, you can experience the highest level of value, which will allow you to earn the most in terms of an income. So this is what everybody wants to aspire to. If you use one or the other, if you just use money, but you have dumb ideas, then it's just going to go to nothing. If you just use ideas and there's no money behind it, then the ideas are going to go to the graveyard, where most ideas go to. So you want to have it in tandem with each other. That's where you want it to be, at the highest level. As well as the levels of value, we have the levels of competence. This is the next tenet, right? So the lowest level of competence is, you've probably seen this one before, you have what's called unconscious incompetence. And that's where you are terrible at what you do. Because what competence means is just how good you are at something. What is your ability in that particular area? So with me, I've always wanted to be the best at what I do. And I've had to go through these 4 levels in so many different areas, in sports, in business. So the first one is what we call unconscious incompetence, where you are terrible and you don't even know how bad you are. You don't even know what you don't know. That's unconscious incompetence. Then we have the level of conscious incompetence, where when you have that point of ignorance, it's better to be there, because now you know what to work on. Now you know what to learn. So it's painful, right? It hurts to figure out that I'm terrible at that particular thing, but at least you can move past that. It's where you want to get to, awareness. Then after conscious incompetence, you move to what's called conscious competence, where you're doing what you want to do and you're doing it well, but the only problem is that you're using a lot of conscious resources to do it well. So whilst you're doing it, you can see that person's thinking a lot about what they're doing. And when a person's thinking a lot about what they're doing, they can't fully express what it is that they know to be. So you want to be in flow state where you're able to simply have it come out effortlessly at the point of unconscious incompetence, where you're using very little conscious resources to do what it is that you want to do, and do it well, do it masterfully. But you can't just get to unconscious incompetence and not think about what you're doing without going through the rest of these levels. So it's important that you get to that stage of conscious competence and unconscious incompetence. It's important that you go through these two. The next tenet that we call is the tenet of parenting, and there's 4 levels to parenting as well, where when we first start out at the lowest level, this is pretty much the level where most parents, they stay out for like their entire their entire careers as parents, if that's what you want to call it. But when it comes to the lowest level of parenting, this is where the purpose is important when you're first starting out. So whether that's the ages of 0 to 4, or when it's just the beginnings of you nurturing a child, this is where the whole intention and the idea is to be helping them to respond well to authority, right? To respond well to instruction, because it's just quick, easy, and also it gets them out of dangerous situations. So at this point, you don't need to necessarily be doing much more, and it would actually be a hindrance to the child if you didn't help them to respond well to authority through training. So training is what we call this level. After this, we move from training to teaching, because teaching is where you are now giving them a little bit more responsibility by helping them to respond well to the reasons behind the rules. You're teaching them the reasons as to why you do what you do and you say what you say, and why you have the rules that you have. So teaching is important, because then it allows them to move to the next level, which is where you start to move through the process of not necessarily them being dependent on you, but now they get to be independent, where they get to work by themselves. And through this, you are at a point of, as you are helping the child or the person who you're parenting, then you are helping them to make their own decisions, which is the pinnacle. The pinnacle is decision making completely independently, and that's full trust. That's the 4th level. But the 3rd level, the one that is the prerequisite for this, is where you are helping them to make decisions, but with their assistance. So with your supervision, should I say. You don't let them just make a decision that's important by themselves. It's more like you sit down together on the same side of the table and you sit with them and say, what's going to be best from here? And I support that decision, or I don't support that decision, but it's kind of giving them the right tools and guidance as to how to make a good decision. So yeah, that's the levels of parenting. And then after that, we've also got the tenet of work, because I believe that it's important that we all work and we sacrifice for something in our life to experience some of those levels of happiness that we spoke about. And this is the thing, like, you're going to see that a lot of these tenets, they all interlink, they're interconnected. You can't really have one without the other, or sometimes by having one you get the other. So when it comes to the levels of work, the first level that we start at is where we probably start as kids a little bit, but it's not necessarily because we're looking to stay there for our entire lives. It's because of the levels of parenting, for example. And this is the level what we call slavery. Now, there has been, of course, a negative connotation to the word slavery because of what's happened with our ancestors in the past, of how they were taken advantage of and not necessarily paid fairly for their work. But the thing about slavery is that, like I said, when you're a kid and you're mowing the lawn for your father, or you're doing things around the house for your parents, that's okay, because they're just teaching you to respond well to authority. But at slavery, what it means is that it's forced labor. It's labor where it's not under your own desire to do the work. That's the best way I can describe it. And you're not getting necessarily paid for what you do. It's on exchange. The level above that is where most people right now, and including the ones who are watching this video, going through this training, most people in the entire world, 97%, are trading their time for money at this level, which is the level of being employed, in employment. So when you're in employment, it's still slavery. It's just that the slavery is different because the shackles are no longer on your wrists in it being physical in terms of how you're kept in or where you're kept. It is now a non-physical chain, and the chain is in your mind, because it is a mental slavery that keeps you there. It is a chain that's in your mind, it's in your heart, it's within, it's in your guts. All of these chains are kept within inside of you, and unless you have the keys to unlock them, then you'll never move to the level of being self-employed, which is the third level. And that's where you are not just working in somebody else's business and you have a job, but you're working in your own business as maybe the only person, and you own a job. So this takes a lot more time, it takes a lot more responsibility, it takes a lot more courage. But the thing about it is that once you get to the point of self-employment, you can earn so much more because you get to determine how much you want to earn. Whatever you put in is what you get out. So this is where you want to get to as a transition, but you don't want to stay there. The reason why you don't want to stay at self-employment is because this is where you're trading your time for money still, and if you're putting in more time to get out more money, you're also losing time. So a lot of people who are rich, they stay at being self-employed because their value is money. If they valued time as opposed to money, then they would want to get to the highest level of work, which is what we call automation. And automation allows us to become business owners because we now create systems. Now we're making money in residual income, in passive income. So that's where you want to ascend to at the level of automation, so that you can transition towards becoming a business owner and an investor. But it has to be done through going through the beginning levels. You don't just jump to becoming someone who has automation. You've got to go through the levels of work. So those are the levels of work in the next tenet. The one after this is what we call the tenet of financial success. Like I said before, financial success was my highest values, where I want to be at the pinnacles of financial success. And a lot of people that come to us, we speak to hundreds of people every single day in our team, in our organization, and what everybody says is that they want to have the pinnacle level of financial freedom. That's the fourth level. But there are so many other levels. Like, people don't understand that there's a process that you've got to ascend to get to the point of financial freedom, where you're earning around about 10 to 20,000 pounds per month. Obviously, financial freedom changes in every country that we're in, but in the UK, about 10 to 20,000 will give you financial freedom. Then there are levels beneath this which you also have to understand in terms of where you're at. A lot of people, they don't even get to experience the level which is the first level of financial stability in other countries, or as people who are unemployed. So if you're at the level of financial stability where you're earning around about 1 to 2,000 pounds a month, be grateful for that, seriously, because that is something that not everybody gets to experience, and you have that right now. If you're not there, make that your sole aim to get to financial stability. After financial stability, now we move to security. So security is where you don't just have enough money to pay for the bills, but you also have enough money for a little bit extra, whether it's a little bit extra in investments, a little bit extra in terms of what you can do with your time, your luxuries, your holidays. you have maybe about double as to what you had at financial stability. So it might be about 2,000-3,000. And then after this, you have the next level, which is where you have financial independence for the first time, because all of that before was financial dependence on other organizations and governments who get to determine how much you make. But as soon as you become financially independent, through becoming self-employed, for example, now you get to earn a lot more. So this is a better place to be at, where you're earning maybe a few thousand more than you were at security, and it gives you that little bit of breathing room. But it's not the pinnacle, it's not what you want to be. Really, so many of you have told me this, you want to be at financial freedom because you know how much that's going to allow you to experience that true wealth and abundance in the God life that you want to be able to experience. And after that, the final one, and one of my favorites of the tenets of the God life, is what we call the tenet of consciousness, because there are levels to consciousness, and I believe that through understanding this, it has changed my life more than any of the ones that I've shared previous, because the lowest level of consciousness is where you're experiencing life as a victim. And life as a victim is horrible. You are always the one that's being thrown into shit. You are always the one who is complaining. You are always the one who is unlucky. Life as a victim is horrible, and nobody wants to be there because everything is happening to you. And you know, if you're a type of person who just seems to have a lot of unfortunate things that are happening, adversity. But what I want you to understand is that every single person in their life, they all have a choice as to whether to stay in that victimhood or whether to ascend to a high level of consciousness where you don't experience those moments of things happening to you as frequently. Nobody's saying that you can't be there at any point in your life, but it's about how often do you stay there. So to me is the lowest level. The level above this is the level we call by me. And by me consciousness is where you are starting to ascend to take responsibility, take ownership, right? Starting to make moves because of what you're doing in terms of your actions. And through doing that, that helps you to move to the higher levels where you can start to operate through more selfless intent, right? Everybody wants to be able to change the world, contribute, do these things so that it makes them feel happier, as we spoke about before with the other tenets. But you can't do that unless you're selfish first, unless you move to the level of by me consciousness, taking responsibility, ownership for what you do, for what your job is, for what your responsibilities are. The third level is where you are now operating through what we call through me consciousness. And as I'm doing this video right now, I'm demonstrating the through me consciousness because I had like no idea what I'm going to be saying as I do this. It's just I'm going to talk about the 9 tenets and it's going to come out. This is what I'm doing throughout the entire course. It's like I'm here to serve the person who's watching this video, and so I operate through the through me consciousness, where through having that intention of providing value to you as watching this video, then I'm going to be able to come up with the right things to say at the right time. And that's something I never really understood until I understood the level of consciousness. And then the fourth level is where you're not just helping other people through being a vessel to that divine energy, that source, but you realizing that you can operate as that same energy, that same source, right? Because you are. So when you're at the Asmi level, we call it like the Christ consciousness. And most people in this life don't necessarily get to be there forever because they ascend to the lower levels. But at the Asmi consciousness, some people tap into it when they, for example, have these out-of-body experiences, or they have these experiences when they take drugs and things like this. That's just like a little bit of a taste as to what it can be like all the time when you're at the Asmi consciousness. So it's a level where you can aim for, and especially if you're looking to create your God life, I would look to potentially have these tenets as one of the things that you put into your God life, and take that as being something quite serious, because it can have such a huge impact when you have this awareness of what your level of consciousness is day by day. So those are the 9 tenets of the God life, and what I would recommend after watching this video is to choose your tenets. You can choose the same ones that I've given you right there with those 9, or you can choose your own with your own levels. And really what you want to be doing is tracking how this is going on a weekly basis, on a monthly basis. If you want, I can even help you set up a tracker if you need to, but if not, set up your own thing, stay organized with it, and start to become aware of where you're at with each of these tenets in your God life. And then through simply becoming aware, you're going to understand what needs improvement, where your strengths are, where your weaknesses are, and you'll be able to make decisions as to what you need to focus on and prioritize based on what you've seen and looking at your tenets right now, where you're at. So yeah, I hope you've learned something new in this video, and that also you've you're getting to understand what can become of your God life as well, and how expansive this really is, how holistic it really is. And then from there, we can speak a little bit more in the next videos about what we can do to really start to focus and prioritize on working on creating your God life and getting into the mechanism of how we do it. So yeah, thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.